It started with something small, as these things often do. Claire, my wife of 7 years, had always been predictable, steady, someone I could count on. We had our routines, coffee together in the mornings, late-night reruns of whatever show we were binging, and lazy Sundays spent cooking or tackling projects around the house. But lately, something had shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but it was there, a gap widening between us that I couldn't seem to close. It was little things. She started leaving her phone face down on the table. She had always been open, unbothered by notifications popping up, messages from friends, silly memes, whatever. But now, that phone never left her side. If she wasn't holding it, it was locked, hidden in her bag, or charging face down like a secret buried in plain sight. I brushed it off at first. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she'd joined some chat group or gotten closer with friends who overshared gossip. Nothing worth prying into. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband who starts acting crazy over nothing. But then there were other changes. Claire stopped lingering in the mornings. She used to sit with me, curled up on the couch, sipping her coffee as we talked about our plans for the day. Now she was in a hurry. She'd grab her mug, offer me a distracted kiss on the cheek, and rush out the door like someone was waiting for her. When I'd ask about her day in the evenings, her answers were vague. Same old, she'd say. No stories about coworkers, no complaints about deadlines, none of the usual little details I'd grown used to. She smiled less, too, a shadow where her warmth used to be. The tipping point came one evening when I walked into the kitchen. She was standing at the counter, typing something on her phone so quickly her fingers blurred. I didn't mean to startle her, but when I said, "Hey, what's for dinner?" she jumped like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. "Oh, just texting Sarah. About her wedding plans." Her voice cracked slightly, a high note of guilt. It wasn't the words. It was how she said them, the stammering, the flushed cheeks, the way she stuffed her phone into her pocket without finishing her thought. Claire was never flustered like that. Never. That was when the suspicion took root. I started noticing other things. Her wardrobe was different. Claire had always been practical, jeans, sneakers, maybe a sundress if we were going somewhere nice. But suddenly, her closet was filled with things I'd never seen before. Fitted blouses, silk tops, expensive lingerie still with the tags attached. She told me she just wanted to treat herself. I pretended to believe her. It's amazing how quickly suspicion turns into obsession. I told myself I wasn't snooping when I glanced at her phone screen while she texted. I told myself I wasn't paranoid when I checked her social media to see who she'd been talking to. I didn't find anything concrete, but that didn't stop my imagination from running wild. I kept seeing that stupid, tiny lock icon on her texts. I'd stare at it, the glow of her phone searing into my vision, as she sat on the other side of the couch, smiling at something she wouldn't share. One night, I decided to confront her, indirectly. I thought I was being clever. "Hey," I said, casual, flipping through channels as we sat together. "You've been on your phone a lot lately. Everything okay?" She didn't look up. "Yeah, why?" "No reason. I feel like we don't talk as much." That got her attention. She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "I've just been busy. Work's been stressful. You know how it is." I nodded, but her words rang hollow. I thought I was imagining it when I heard her laughing in the middle of the night. I woke up to an empty bed, the sound of her voice faint but unmistakable. I crept out into the hallway and found her sitting in the darkened living room, her phone pressed to her ear, whispering. Her laugh, soft, conspiratorial, cut through me like a knife. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I lay awake until morning, my mind spinning. Who was she talking to at 2 a.m.? Why was she hiding? The following week, I decided I needed answers. I came home from work early, hoping to catch her off guard. I'd half expected to find something dramatic. A stranger in the house, an illicit phone call, but the house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I noticed her laptop on the dining table. It was open, a document half-typed on the screen. Claire never left her laptop unattended. My heart thumped as I walked toward it, torn between guilt and desperation. I wasn't that guy. I wasn't. But I needed to know. I looked at the screen. It was a resignation letter. Dear Mr. Price, I regret to inform you that I will be leaving my position. My breath caught in my throat. Claire loved her job. She'd worked her way up, fought for promotions, stayed late to prove herself. She wouldn't quit. Not unless there was a reason. I scrolled through her recent emails, hands shaking. That's when I found it, an exchange with someone named Aiden. It wasn't long or explicit, just a few lines buried in a thread about next steps. But there was a tone to it, a casual intimacy that made my stomach turn. I can't wait to see you again. Last week was perfect. Looking forward to Tuesday too. Same time? I couldn't breathe. Who the hell was Aiden? Was he her coworker? Someone else? What happened last week? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was reading too much into it, twisting innocent words into something sinister. But I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unfeel the creeping dread curling in my chest. That evening, I couldn't look her in the eye. She noticed. Are you okay? She asked, setting her phone down just out of my reach. For once. I said. I couldn't tell her what I'd found, not yet. I spent the next few days spiraling. I watched her more closely than ever, like a detective on the edge of a breakthrough. I started checking her phone while she was in the shower, skimming through her texts with shaking hands. I didn't find Aiden's name. Either she'd deleted the messages, or he was under a different contact. And then the final blow. I came home late one night, earlier than I'd told her. I parked down the street, for no other reason than to sit in the car and collect myself. That's when I saw the light flicker in our living room window, and the shadow of a man moving inside. I sat frozen for a moment, staring up at the house, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to move. But eventually, I got out of the car, walked up the steps, and unlocked the front door. The living room was empty. The TV was on, casting blue light across the walls. I heard the back door close, soft, deliberate. Claire appeared from the hallway, wearing the old hoodie I'd bought her years ago. She smiled too brightly, as though everything was fine. Hey, you're home early. I stared at her, searching her face for some trace of the truth. Who was here? I asked quietly. Her smile faltered. What? Who was just here, Claire? I saw someone. She laughed nervously. No one. What are you talking about? I didn't believe her. But I couldn't prove anything. So I did what I always did. I let it go. For now. The suspicion that had taken root weeks ago had grown into something I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I tried. Claire's sudden secrecy, the late-night phone calls, and the shadow I'd seen in our living room that night, it all swirled in my head, refusing to leave me alone. I couldn't sleep anymore, couldn't eat without feeling like a stone was lodged in my chest. And Claire? Claire kept acting like nothing was wrong, as if our life together wasn't slowly falling apart. I told myself I wouldn't check her phone again. I wasn't that guy. I didn't want to become someone who snooped around, someone who doubted his wife so much he'd betray her privacy. But the gnawing in my gut wouldn't let me rest. Something was wrong. Something was happening, and I couldn't sit there and pretend not to see it anymore. The opportunity came one rainy Saturday morning. Claire had been in a rush again, another errand that she didn't bother to explain. She left her phone charging on the kitchen counter, a rare and risky move. I stared at it for what felt like forever, the screen dark, her secrets hidden just a swipe away. My hands felt clammy as I picked it up. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. One swipe, Ethan. Just one swipe. The lock screen opened. She'd forgotten to lock it. I froze for a moment, the realization sinking in. This was it. I could still put the phone back, pretend I hadn't seen it. But my thumb moved on its own, guided by the dread I couldn't shake. I opened her messages, scrolling past the mundane conversations with her friends and coworkers, looking for something, anything, that didn't feel right. And then I saw it. A thread marked only by a name, Ryan. The name made my blood run cold. I didn't know any Ryan. Claire had never mentioned a Ryan. My thumb hovered over it, hesitating, as if opening those messages would pull me into some dark place I couldn't escape. But it was already too late. I tapped the thread. The first thing I saw was a message from her. Thursday, same time. I can't wait to see you again. The blood drained from my face. My hands shook as I scrolled up, my eyes darting over the words, trying to make sense of what I was reading. The messages stretched back weeks, maybe months. Short texts, but filled with so much more than words. This has to stay between us. I'm so happy. The results came back positive. You've made this so much easier for me, Ryan. I don't know what I'd do without you. Every word sliced deeper than the last. Positive results. Secret meetings. I didn't know what it all meant yet, but I knew enough. Claire was having an affair. My Claire, the woman I'd built my life with, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was sneaking off to meet someone else, hiding it all right under my nose. I kept scrolling, my breath coming faster, sharp and ragged as the betrayal unfolded in front of me. You were right, I do feel different already. I haven't felt this good in years. You deserve this, Claire. We both do. Just a little longer, and we'll figure out the rest. My stomach turned. I could feel bile rising in my throat, but I couldn't stop reading. I needed to know the full extent of it. I reached the most recent message, from this morning, just before she left. I'll be at the usual spot by 11. Don't be late. I need to see you. Claire. My wife. The woman I'd loved for 7 years. I didn't recognize her anymore. I set the phone down with shaking hands, the screen glowing like some cruel spotlight on the truth I hadn't been ready to see. My vision blurred as I stared at it, my mind screaming 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Who was Ryan? How long had this been going on? And what were those results they kept mentioning? Medical? Was she sick? Pregnant? Nothing made sense, but one thing was clear. Claire had been lying to me. She'd been living a double life, and I'd been too blind to see it. I stood there in the kitchen, frozen, replaying every moment from the past few weeks. Her sudden change in behavior. The secret phone calls. The resignation letter. The shadow I'd seen that night. It was all connected. Ryan. That bastard. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. Claire was home. I could hear her humming softly, setting down her keys in the hallway. My pulse raced. I didn't know what to do. Confront her now? Act like nothing had happened? She walked into the kitchen and smiled when she saw me, as if everything was perfectly normal. Hey, she said, hanging her bag on the chair. You're up early. Want some coffee? I stared at her, my mouth dry, the words trapped in my throat. She was so calm, so natural, like she hadn't just spent the morning meeting him. I wondered how long she'd been doing this, coming home to me, kissing me goodnight, while someone else held her secrets. I couldn't stand it. Claire, I said, my voice hoarse. Who's Ryan? Her smile faltered. She blinked, her expression shifting ever so slightly, shock, fear, and then something I couldn't place. What? She said too quickly. You heard me. I pointed to her phone, still sitting on the counter. Ryan. Who is he? Her face went pale. For the first time I saw it, the guilt, the panic. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Don't lie to me, Claire, I said, my voice trembling with anger I couldn't contain. I saw the messages. She froze, her entire body rigid. Ethan, I can explain. Explain what? I cut her off, my voice rising. That you've been sneaking off to meet him? That you've been hiding something from me for weeks? How long has this been going on? How long, Claire? Her eyes welled with tears, but I didn't care. I couldn't. My heart was pounding, my vision blurring with rage and betrayal. The woman standing in front of me wasn't my wife. She was a stranger. I trusted you, I whispered, my voice breaking. I trusted you, and you? Claire finally spoke, her voice shaking. It's not what you think. But it was too late for explanations. Too late for lies. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there in silence, her phone still glowing with the evidence of everything she'd destroyed. When I stormed out of the kitchen that morning, my mind was a hurricane of rage and confusion. Her stammered excuses, her guilty expression, they only fed the fire burning inside me. I had proof. Real, undeniable proof that the woman I trusted more than anyone had been sneaking around behind my back with some guy named Ryan. But knowing the truth didn't bring relief, it only made me angrier. For hours, I sat in the car parked a few streets away from our house, staring at my phone. Claire had called me a dozen times, each missed call vibrating like a warning. I couldn't talk to her. I didn't want to hear more lies. Instead, I stared at the messages I'd found. I read through them again and again, each word twisting the knife deeper. Thursday, same time. I can't wait to see you again. The results came back positive. I haven't felt this good in years. I couldn't stop myself from spiraling. I thought of every moment I'd spent with Claire, believing we were happy, believing we were real. The house we'd made a home. The nights we'd spent laughing over stupid movies. Every "I love you" she'd whispered, every kiss she'd given me, all of it felt tainted now, fake. And Ryan, the bastard who had been living in the shadows of my marriage, stealing what wasn't his. His name made my blood boil. I didn't know who he was, what he looked like, or where he came from, but I hated him with every fiber of my being. By the time I got back home that evening, Claire was gone. I didn't know where she was, and I didn't care. I walked straight to our bedroom, grabbed her laptop from the desk, and sat down to face the mess she'd created. Her phone had given me a glimpse of the betrayal, but her laptop? That was the jackpot. It didn't take long to find more. Claire had hidden nothing. Emails, texts, even photos, a handful of blurred selfies sent back and forth between her and Ryan. Some were innocent enough, her smiling at a coffee shop, him sending a picture of a park, but combined with the messages, it all painted a clear picture. Meetings during her errands, long conversations about the future, whatever it was, they weren't just coworkers or friends. They were planning something. Together. I stared at the photos and messages, seething. My hands trembled as I pieced everything together, screenshotting it all, saving the texts, the photos, anything I could use. At first, I didn't know why I was saving it. Maybe part of me wanted to confront Claire with every shred of evidence, to hold it up and scream at her until she admitted everything. Maybe I just wanted to understand how it all started, when I had lost her. But then something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to hide this. I wasn't going to let her get away with quietly ruining my life while everyone around us thought she was the perfect wife. No, Claire had been lying to me, to everyone, for weeks, months even, and I wasn't about to keep her secrets. If she wanted to humiliate me by sneaking around with Ryan, fine. But I'd make sure the whole world knew the truth. Fueled by anger I couldn't contain, I started putting it all together. I opened a video editor on her laptop and began dragging in everything I'd saved, screenshots of the texts, the emails, the photos. I added captions, circling her messages, highlighting the ones that hurt the most. Thursday, same time. I can't wait to see you again. Secret meetings while I sat at home waiting for her. I'm so happy. The results came back positive. Whatever positive meant, she kept it from me. I even added the photo of her smiling in a cafe, her message to Ryan still visible. You make everything feel easy. By the time I finished, I had a 3-minute video. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just cold, hard facts. Claire's words and Ryan's name laid bare for everyone to see. I stared at the file for a long time, my finger hovering over the upload button. This wasn't who I was. I wasn't a vindictive person. I didn't air my dirty laundry for the world to see. But Claire had already destroyed our marriage. She had destroyed me. Why should I protect her? Why should I let her walk away from this unscathed while I sat here drowning in my own humiliation? Before I could second-guess myself, I uploaded the video to Facebook. The caption was simple: when your wife of 7 years has a secret life. Meet Ryan. I hit post. The moment the video went live, my phone started buzzing with notifications. At first, it was just friends, people we knew casually, leaving shocked comments and question marks. But it didn't take long for it to spiral out of control. The video spread faster than I expected. People started sharing it, friends of friends, strangers who didn't know either of us but couldn't resist the drama. Within an hour, the video had hundreds of views. Within 3, it had thousands. Comments poured in, some expressing sympathy, others condemning Claire. A handful even tried to defend her, suggesting I was overreacting or jumping to conclusions, but I ignored them. My phone rang nonstop, calls from friends, family, Even people I hadn't spoken to in years. I let them all go to voicemail. I couldn't deal with anyone right now. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the video as it racked up views, feeling hollow and numb. Then Claire called. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Eventually I picked up, my voice cold and detached. What do you want? Her voice cracked on the other end. Ethan, what did you do? You did this, Claire, I snapped. I just showed everyone the truth. Take it down, she begged, her voice breaking. Please. You don't understand. No, I cut her off. I understand perfectly. I understand that you've been lying to me for months. I understand that there's someone named Ryan who seems to mean more to you than I ever did. And now everyone else understands it too. She was crying, sobbing so hard I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Ethan, she whispered. You've ruined everything. No, Claire, I said, my voice steady. You did. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the sun was setting, the light spilling through the window like it was any other day. But nothing felt normal anymore. Nothing would ever be normal again. Claire's betrayal was out there for everyone to see. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was the one in control. I thought the video would just be a slap in the face, a way to let her know she couldn't get away with what she'd done. I didn't expect the fallout to be as brutal as it was. It spread like wildfire across our social circles. Friends, coworkers, and people we hadn't spoken to in years suddenly knew everything. And worse, they had an opinion. At first, Claire tried to fight back. She sent me message after message, begging me to take the video down. You don't understand, she kept saying. But there was nothing left for me to understand. The messages, the secret meetings, it was all there in black and white. I didn't respond. I didn't care to. The first signs of the collapse came with her friends. We shared most of the same group, couples we'd met over the years, friends who'd been with us through weddings, housewarmings, and anniversaries. At first, they tried to reach out to me cautiously, asking, is everything okay? Or, what's really going on? But I'd already laid it out for them. Claire, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Her friends started disappearing. No one wanted to be the person defending an affair that was now public knowledge. The few who stayed quiet weren't supporting her, they were just waiting. Watching. And then came her job. Claire worked for a mid-sized firm in marketing, a role she'd loved. I didn't think the video would reach her work, but nothing stays private when the internet gets involved. I heard about it from one of our mutual friends. They let Claire go, he said bluntly over the phone. Apparently, the higher-ups didn't want the bad press. I sat there, stunned for a moment, my emotions tangled. I didn't hate Claire, at least, not the way I wanted to. I was angry, but the thought of her sitting in her office, surrounded by whispers and judgment, losing the career she'd worked so hard to build, it made my chest ache. I'd spent so long thinking about my own humiliation that I hadn't really considered what it would do to her. But then I remembered the messages. The secrecy. The late nights laughing on the phone with someone who wasn't me. And I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for her. Her family wasn't far behind. Claire's parents had always liked me, or so I thought. They'd invited us over for dinners, treated me like a son. But after the video, I didn't hear a word from them. Nothing. I didn't know what they'd said to Claire, but I knew one thing. They weren't backing her. Claire stopped mentioning them entirely, and I figured she was on her own. Mutual friends started telling me things. Someone saw Claire at the grocery store, her hood pulled up, rushing through the aisles like she couldn't get out of there fast enough. Someone else ran into her at a coffee shop. She'd been sitting alone, staring at her phone, as if waiting for someone who would never show up. It was strange hearing about her like that, like a ghost haunting her old life. She stopped posting on social media entirely. No Instagram updates, no Facebook check-ins. For someone like Claire, who thrived on connection, it must have been hell. And yet, part of me still watched. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for signs of regret. Maybe I wanted to see her fight back, to defend herself, to prove that all of this wasn't as simple as it seemed. But she didn't. The Claire I knew, the confident, put-together woman I'd married, disappeared. A few weeks after everything blew up, I saw her for the first time since she'd begged me on the phone to take the video down. It wasn't planned. I'd gone to grab lunch at a small cafe downtown. She was sitting outside, alone at a corner table. She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders slumped, her hair pulled back carelessly like she hadn't bothered with it in days. I don't think she saw me at first. I stood there, frozen, watching her pick at the edge of her coffee cup, her eyes downcast, as if she was trying to disappear. I almost turned around and walked away. Almost. But something made me stop. I walked over to her table, my footsteps loud against the pavement. She looked up when she heard me, her face pale. For a second I saw all of it, her guilt, her shame, her exhaustion. "Ethan," she said softly, like my name hurt to say. I didn't sit down. I just looked at her, waiting for her to speak. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, the same voice she used when she was defeated, when she knew she'd lost an argument. She trailed off, shaking her head. "I don't even know anymore." I didn't respond. What was there to say? "You ruined everything? You threw us away for Ryan?" I'd said enough already. She looked at me then, her eyes red and tired. "Everyone hates me now," she whispered. I could have said something cruel, something to twist the knife the way she'd twisted it into me. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there, alone with the mess she'd made. Claire's world had fallen apart. Her friends, her job, her family, they'd all pulled away, one by one, until she had no one left. And while I'd thought it would bring me satisfaction, it didn't. It just felt empty. Because no matter how much I hated what she'd done, a part of me still remembered the woman I'd loved. The woman who used to laugh with me, not at me. The woman who used to make me feel whole. Now, all that was left of her was this, a shadow of herself, sitting alone at a cafe, paying the price for choices she couldn't undo. After everything that had happened, there was no coming back from it. Claire's affair, her lies, and the fallout that followed had shattered any love I still had for her. The woman I'd shared my life with for 7 years had turned into someone unrecognizable, and even if I wanted to, I couldn't rebuild what she had burned to the ground. I spent a week wrestling with the idea of filing. There were moments, quiet moments, late at night, where I second-guessed myself. Was this really what I wanted? Was it worth it? But every time those questions crept in, all I had to do was remember her texts to Ryan. The late-night calls. The lies to my face while I waited for her to come home. No, there was no fixing this. When I met with my lawyer, I laid everything out on the table. The video I had made. The texts I'd found. The photos. He listened quietly, nodding occasionally as I spoke, before leaning back in his chair with a look of certainty I hadn't expected. "We've got a solid case," he said, his tone steady and professional. "The proof you've gathered paints a clear picture of her infidelity. With this evidence, you stand to come out of this in a very strong position." Hearing it framed so clearly made the weight of the situation hit me all over again. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about ending it properly. Legally. Cleanly. I wasn't about to let Claire walk away with half of everything I'd worked for while I sat in the ruins of our marriage. The papers were served a few days later. I didn't see Claire when it happened, but I heard about it through a mutual friend. She was at a coffee shop, again alone, when the server handed her the envelope. Apparently, she just sat there for a long time afterward, staring at the papers in silence. I didn't feel bad. I couldn't. The court proceedings came faster than I expected. Claire didn't have the money to fight me, not anymore. After losing her job, her savings had dwindled, and her family wasn't offering her much support. It was clear she had no plan. She didn't contest the divorce. I think she knew she didn't stand a chance. We sat across from each other in that cold, sterile courtroom, a heavy silence stretching between us as the lawyers made their arguments. I barely recognized her. Claire, who had always been so poised and put together, sat there looking hollow, like a shell of herself. Her hair was pulled back into a loose bun, her clothes were wrinkled, and the shadows under her eyes made her look older, smaller. I should have felt triumphant seeing her like that. After all, she was the one who'd done this to us. But as I watched her stare blankly at the floor, I realized that I didn't feel much of anything. There was no joy in this. No satisfaction. Just the dull ache of watching two lives, our lives, fall apart piece by piece. When the judge read the final decision, it was exactly what my lawyer had predicted. Claire walked away with next to nothing. The house, the car, the bulk of our savings, most of it went to me. I'd worked hard for those things, and the proof of her affair had tipped the scales firmly in my favor. Claire didn't even look surprised when the ruling came down. She just nodded numbly, like she'd already known it was coming. Afterward, as we left the courtroom, Claire stopped me in the hallway. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Ethan?" I turned to look at her. She seemed so small standing there, clutching her bag with trembling hands. "What?" I asked, my tone flat. Her lips quivered as she tried to speak, but no words came out at first. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry. For everything." I stared at her for a long moment. The anger that had driven me for weeks wasn't there anymore. All that was left was emptiness. "Sorry doesn't change anything, Claire," I said. "It's too late for that." She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I know." I walked away after that, leaving her standing there alone in the hallway. The finality of it hit me as I stepped outside into the sunlight. It was over. The marriage, the love we'd shared, the life we'd built, it was all gone, reduced to court rulings and paperwork. When I got back to the house, my house now, it was silent. The photos we'd once hung on the walls had been taken down. Her things were gone, her presence erased. I stood in the middle of the living room, the quiet almost deafening, and tried to let it all sink in. I'd won. At least, that's what everyone said. My lawyer, my friends, even my family. "You came out on top," they told me. But as I sat down on the couch, staring at the empty space where Claire's favorite blanket used to be, it didn't feel like a win. It felt like the end of something I'd never get back. Claire had nothing now. No job. No friends. No family willing to stand by her. And while I didn't pity her, I realized that we'd both lost in the end. Her choices had destroyed us both, and no ruling from a judge could change that. This was the price of betrayal. A life torn apart, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but regret and empty rooms.